Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out to Book Passage on a Wednesday night and supporting your local independent bookstore. We are so lucky, all the terrific, fantastic authors we get to host here at Book Passage. So thank you for coming out this evening. My name is Melissa Sestaro, and I can't believe that I have the honor of introducing Vendela Vida. She is a remarkable storyteller and a writer that I have admired for a long time. Vendela is the author of 4 novels, including The Lovers and Let the Northern Lights Erase Your Name. She is also a screenwriter, co-founder of The Believer magazine, and the wonderful organization 826 Valencia. And now she has done it again, written a stunning, evocative, page-turning novel. The Diver's Clothes Lie Empty. Imagine you travel to another country, across the globe to Morocco, to get away from what has recently happened in your life, and shortly after arriving, your backpack that contains all your identification, credit cards, laptop, passport are stolen. You are without an identity. And this is where Vendela's finely crafted story begins. Without a moment to spare, Sam, could you get security to the back door right away? Thank you. Please join me in welcoming the lovely and talented Vendela Vida to Book Passage.
Thank you so much, guys, for coming out. I should also add, Melissa is a really fine writer, and you should check out her book as well. And she can sign her books afterwards.
Stop, it's your night.
So nice to see you. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna move the microphone here. I'm so glad also you said a little bit about what the story is about. I'm going to read a sort of lighter passage tonight because it feels kind of warm out. It feels, I don't know, I feel like I'm in a light mood. So I thought I'd read a date scene, if that sounds good to everyone. Yeah, date scenes. Who doesn't like a date scene? And I just want to say thank you to Book Passage for always supporting my books. My kids have grown up coming to this very area, the bookstore, when it was a kids section, so it's really fun to be reading here. So, what happens in this book, as Melissa was saying, is a woman arrives in Casablanca and her backpack and identity are stolen when upon checking into her hotel. And she finds that this is obviously an inconvenience, but because of what she's recently gone through in her life, she also finds it oddly liberating. She has a chance to be whoever she wants to be. A chance encounter with a film producer leads to her working as a stand-in for a famous American actress. And I think probably everyone knows what a stand-in is on set, but there's the people who are just, they're very famous people. They kind of just set up the scene. They're there to block out the scenes. They're there for the lighting to be adjusted. They're also there for another reason. Say Sandra Bullock is filming a movie at Book Passage, and she is spotted, as being in Book Passage pretty soon because of Twitter and everything. It would be a mob scene at Book Passage, which might be good for Book Passage, but not for the movie set and for the director. So the other purpose the stand-in has is kind of make sure that no one notices what's going on and no one pays any attention to the fact that there's a movie being filmed there. If they should see someone they don't recognize standing there with movies with film cameras going, they don't really care. They don't tweet about it. So the protagonist becomes a stand-in for this famous American actress, and the famous American actress gets so accustomed to having a stand-in on set that she kind of asks her to start taking on some of her stand-in responsibilities offset as well. And so in the scene I'm going to read for you, the famous American actress asked her to go on a date in her place. There's a famous, not famous, there's a very wealthy Russian billionaire who's come to Casablanca to have dinner with the famous American actress. And because the actress has been dating other people recently and she knows that the Russian billionaire knows this, she just doesn't feel like dealing with him, so she sends the stand-in in her place. These are things you need to know. The stand-in is wearing a wig in order to look like the actress. She's black with bangs. The Russian's name is Leopoldi. The protagonist is also leaving her husband. There's reference to that, so you know what's happening. That's part of the reason why she's escaped to Morocco. And the other thing you need to know is that this book is written in the second person. So when I say you, I mean you and you and you, and especially you. You're all you, so you're the protagonist. And I'm going to read for about 13 or 14 minutes. I like to tell people that so they don't think that I'm going to read the whole book. This is the start of the date scene. You climb the stairs of the restaurant, the walls covered with fishnets and ship's wheels. At the top, near a topless mermaid that once helmed a ship that most likely sank, you tell the maitre d' that someone is expecting you. You see your date standing in the corner of the room. He has a prime table with a view. He's in his late 40s, wearing a suit and tie. He's tall and wide and not as unattractive as you expected, given that the famous American actress is passing him on to you. You know it's him because he stands with his arms outstretched and with an expression that seems about to say, darling, in Russian, except that he doesn't. He places his arms back at his sides and gives you a quizzical look. You walk up and greet him. You shake his hand and tell him your name is Reeves. So she's not coming, he says. His accent is less Russian and more global than you expected. You tell him that filming is running late. Right, he says, and I'm supposed to believe you? You have no answer for this. You didn't expect him to be so skeptical. You see the profound disappointment, even anger, on his face, and reassure him she'll very likely be stopping by later. She said no such thing to you. He extends his hand toward your chair. It's turned toward the window, and this is your first clue that he cares about the famous American actress. If he simply wanted to show her off, he would have seated her so she faced out at the room. But she, and now you, are expected to face the window, out of which you can see a darkening sky, but little of the ocean and nothing of the pier on which the restaurant is situated. You offer him a brief smile. His nose looks like it was broken, and he has a scar on his right cheek. His hair is gray, but still thick. He offers no smile in return. He simply stares at you like you're a practical item in a store that he's deliberating whether he wants to buy. The waiter approaches. He's an older Moroccan man with tired eyes, as though he's been working at this restaurant for too many years and has seen too many tourists, too many poorly matched couples. The waiter places 2 gin and tonics on the table, takes your order, and leaves. So who are you exactly? Leopoldi says. What do you do for her? You tell him that you're her stand-in on set. Just for this film, you explain. And now you're standing in for her date with me, he says, matter-of-factly. You explain again that she has to work late. It sounds less and less convincing. Well, let's make it a nice meal, Reeves, he says. Are you in agreement? You clink glasses. To a nice meal, you say. The gin and tonic has an immediate effect on him. You can see him relaxing and he loosens his tie. His tie is expensive looking and like all expensive ties has a stupid pattern. This one has little frogs. You wish he would take it off. He sees you staring at the tie. Isn't this the ugliest tie you've seen in your life, he says. You can't help it. You let out a laugh. You were thinking that, weren't you, he says. You were wondering why a handsome man like me would wear a tie like this. It is a tie for idiots. You weren't thinking that he was handsome, but you don't correct him on this point. Yes, you say. As a matter of fact, that's exactly what I was thinking. She sent it to me from Japan, he says, from that movie she was doing there, the one with the montage of her eating 50 different bowls of rice. You know which film he's talking about. You chose not to see it. My guess is it wasn't her who picked it out, but the secretary, you venture. She has this very practical secretary who handles her life. She's maybe 20 years older, and smiling for her is a considerable challenge. Are you trying to make me feel better, Leopoldi says? Is that supposed to make me feel better, that she had her secretary pick out a romantic present for me? He seems incensed, and his face pinkens as though the tie is choking him. You apologize. You are thinking that you should leave before the drinks are finished. You have made a colossal error. Reeves, I'm just messing with you, he says. Of course that makes me feel better. I was going around thinking that she had the worst taste in the world picking out this tie with these toads on it. I mean, who would pick out such a thing? His laugh is uproarious. He laughs like a larger man than he is. Maybe it's the money, you think. Maybe when you have that much money in the bank, you can laugh uproariously like a very large man at things that aren't that funny. You turn slightly, your eyes searching for the waiter. The restaurant is starting to fill up with wealthy Moroccans and tourists. People sit at tables in strange configurations of 4 or 7 or 3, like they're stars and constellations that will never be named. The gin and tonic is getting to your head. You need the food to come. When it arrives, you dig into the black bass. The salad is sad-looking with leaky tomatoes and lettuce so pale it's white, but the bass is fresh. I like a woman with an appetite, Leopoldi says to you. You smile with your mouth full. You realize the conversation is bound to turn more personal. You don't want him to ask about yourself. You will need to ask about him, about his business. You will need to act riveted by his responses. What do, you ask? It must be wonderful. Which business are you talking about, he says, again laughing and finding this overly entertaining. I own many companies. You ask him what his favorite is. My favorite company, he says. That's like asking a man who his favorite child is. You ask if he has children. Not a good topic right now, he tells you. There's some paternity testing going on. He seems upset with you. He focuses on his food. You want to remind him that he's the one who brought up children. But then a bottle of wine arrives and his mood brightens. The waiter pours you each a glass of Chardonnay. You were asking about my favorite business, he says. It's a cosmetic laser, a better one than what's out there right now. For scars, acne, he explains. He's looking at your face. Protagonist has really bad acne scars from her teenage years. He leans over and softly takes your chin in his large hand and tilts your head to the side. With the fingers of his left hand, he brushes the bangs of the wig out of your face so that he can see you more clearly. It's an intimate gesture, one that takes you by surprise. He studies your face so intently that for a moment you think you might cry. You don't think your husband ever examined your features so closely, that he ever moved your hair out of your face. This was in large part why you married him. You liked the fact that he never stole glances at you, that he turned off the lights before you kissed. You thought that with him you could be invisible, until you realized that wasn't at all what you wanted. May I ask what happened to your skin, Leopoldi says. Tiny tears are forming in the corner of your eyes, but he doesn't wish to embarrass you by asking about them. Instead he says, despite your makeup I can see. Teenage acne, you explain. He nods and lets go of your chin gently. You would not have expected him to be so careful with his touch. And you say, emboldened by his question, by his caress, may I ask about your scar? He puts down his fork and knife. This is going to be a story. I wasn't always so wealthy, he tells you. I grew up poor in a little town between Moscow and St. Petersburg, on a farm. I was helping my father with the fence one day, a new barbed wire fence to keep the sheep from getting away. My brother was driving a tractor and I was attaching the wire to the fence when it sprung out of my hand and slashed across my face. You have this in common, the marks of your past on your skin. You both look out the window as though wanting to focus on the beauty of the outside world, but the sun has set now and you see only your own reflections. I have a plan, he says, both boisterously and boastfully. He says more like, I have a plan. I get his voice better. Turning back from the window to you, I made a reservation at Rick's Cafe for a nightcap, he says. Of course, that's when I thought she was coming and not you, but it's a great place. Have you been? You ask if he means the same Rick's Cafe from the movie Casablanca. Not the same one, he says. That was just a stage set in, I believe, Culver City. You're surprised he knows about Culver City. But, he continues, the woman who owns this one is American, and she fixed it up so it looks like the one in the movie. There's even a piano player. It does sound appealing, and you don't have much choice but to go. You promised the famous American actress you'd make sure he had a good evening, and you have no other ride back home to the hotel. A driver in a town car waits for the two of you in the parking lot. The driver opens the door for you on one side and then goes around to the other side to open it for Leopoldi. You thank Leopoldi for dinner, and he seems touched that you thanked him. In the distance, you can hear the music from Casablanca. It's really an actual jazz festival that goes on there called Casablanca. You should check it out if you are interested in jazz in Casablanca. I called ahead and asked for a special table, he says. I said we needed discretion because of who she was. This, of course, means that when you arrive at Rick's Cafe Americain, which has the exact neon sign outside that you remember from the film, there's no discretion at all. The hostess is overly polite to you as she walks you slowly through the main dining area, which is spanned by arches. The tablecloths and cushions are white, the walls and arches are white. The restaurant is crowded with diners speaking English, Spanish, and French, and there is indeed a piano player rushing through as time goes by. A few tourists smoke cigars at the bar. You can tell by the way they're holding them that they don't usually smoke cigars, but they want to act like they're in another time period. You see a few heads turn as you pass by. You're wearing the wigs, your hair is like hers. You're wearing her dress. You know what they are all thinking. In real life, she's not as beautiful. You are seated upstairs in a private area shrouded by large palm leaves. Your back is to the other diners and drinkers. Leopoldi orders you a drink called the Ingrid and orders himself a vodka. I was just drinking gin and tonics before because that's what she likes to drink, he says. Real Russians, we drink our vodka. Vodka is our water. The more he drinks, the more he sounds like the Russian farm boy he was. You drink the Ingrid through a straw. You do not want him to ask you about yourself. You know that to be a good liar, you have to remember your lies, and you're in a state of drunkenness in which you're having trouble remembering much at all. When you finish your drink, you feel a little lopsided in your chair, like you're slumping, so you adjust yourself and boom, you are on the floor. Leopoldi is squeezing around the table to help you up, but you also sense something bright out of the corner of your eye. It's the white lightning of flash. A tourist is taking a photo of you, a photo showing how drunk you are that you fell to the ground. Stop, you say, and you hold up your hand in the direction of the flash attack. It won't stop. This tourist will not stop taking photos. Leopoldi helps you up and escorts you to the car. You roll down the window and the car speeds and stops and speeds as you zoom your way back to the Grand Hotel. You inhale deeply, taking in the dirty night air. You decide you must watch Casablanca again. You must buy souvenirs for your mother, who has never been to Morocco and who always loves to collect clothing and shoes from faraway lands. You must be in constant touch with your niece throughout her entire life. Leopoldi helps you up to your room and asks for your key. Miraculously, you remember your key is secured under the front clasp of your bra. You hand the now warm key card to Leopoldi and he lets you into the room. He stands on the threshold. It was a nice evening, he says. I'm sorry I overserved you. You intend to thank him for being a gentleman, for standing on the other side of the threshold. You move your mouth. Why is it so difficult to move your mouth? And the door closes on him, loudly. The bed seems miles away. You drop onto your knees and use the foot of the mattress as a pillow for your tired and heavy head. And that's how the date night ends. So now's the part of the evening where you get to ask questions of me if you want, or I can ask questions of you if I want. I can tell you what other questions people ask. However you want to play it, it's up to you. Yeah.
I love the book. I read it, and
Thank you.
there was a point in the book on page.
Oh, quoting.
One second, page 94,
Okay.
where you're talking with the bodyguard.
Where the you was talking about, yeah.
Yes, and well, the character,
Uh-huh.
and you put in the sentence, as a twin, you've always been interested in nature versus nurture.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, oh my God, she's a twin. And so that whole piece of the story I think is so important. And I wondered if you could talk about how you decided to choose the character being a twin.
Mhm.
And being a twin myself,
Oh, you're a twin. I
yeah.
know that.
Everything from the betrayal, I mean, it's all so deep,
Mhm.
what goes on in the story. But if you could just sort of talk a little bit about that, that would be great.
Thanks for the question. I haven't gotten that one before, so that's really, I have to think.
It's like, ding, ding, ding,
yeah, I didn't know at first she was going to be a twin, and then sometimes I think when you're writing, you're given clues by the book itself. So I had another set of twins on set that are on the movie set, and the more I started realizing how much the book was about doubles and people like, mirroring each other. She's like standing in for the actress. She's, there are all this doubling going on that I thought, oh gosh, actually she should be a twin. And then I have to get rid of so many other twins because there's only so many twins you can have in a book. But and then I really liked the idea of the fact that they were twins and that she always felt it's often mentioned that she was the less attractive of the twins, and just they had different social lives growing up, and so it became part of the story. And then I don't want to give away any big plot points, but because I won't. But that was how the twin idea came to me, and I'm also just fascinated by twins, like people who have the same upbringing, and the art. There's a lot of I try to slip in other stuff about evolution in the book too, and so without making it too sciencey, and so I was really interested in that.
Yeah. It was very, very resonant for me, all the different pieces, which everyone here, if you read it, you will take in. So thank you.
Thank you. Hi.
I realize that authors don't determine the cover, but I was curious about the sketch of the woman on the cover, because it's all in black except the right leg then that she's stepping out of is in skin tone, and I'm wondering if you think that tells us something about the book.
I am so glad you asked that. I'm so happy tonight. These are all questions I haven't gotten before. This is really exciting. Clearly, you guys are a smart bunch, or original bunch, I should say. First of all, I actually, because I work at The Believer, which is a literary magazine, I'm really interested in covers, and so I was very involved in the cover for this book. And there's Adrian Tomine he does a lot of New Yorker covers, and he's an artist I really admire, so I actually wrote to him and I asked him if he would do this cover for my book for me. And he had done some stuff for The Believers before, so I had contact with him, and he said he usually didn't like to do book covers, but he would do it. And so I was really happy, my publisher was really happy, and fortunately they agreed to pay instead of me, so that was really good. Although I do have a funny story about how I had to try to check to Bruce Springsteen about because of this book, but anyway, that's another story. Literally, I had to write Bruce Springsteen, musician, a check for $100. Anyway, I digress. So I worked with Adrian on the cover and what I thought, and this was actually an image that kind of comes into play toward the end of the book. I won't give anything away, but I was really happy that he did it, and also the funny thing that happened in the book is there's a woman, for those of you who have read any part of it, there's a woman who's kind of a very big presence in the book who is identified by these white puffy Reeboks that she's wearing, and that's the only clue that she has white puffy Reeboks. And what's so funny to me is that actually that idea came from Adrian, from the designer, and that he was asking me, and he said, he was finishing the sketch of the woman, and he said, what kind of shoes do you think that she would be wearing? Do you think she would be wearing high heels or flats or the white puffy Reeboks, and I said, oh God, well definitely I don't think she's wearing white puffy Reeboks. Although he told me that his sister-in-law, who's really a hipster in Williamsburg, wears them because when you're really hipster, you can wear white puffy Reeboks. So I said definitely not white puffy Reeboks, but then it actually made its way into the book that there's a character who's wearing them, and I really liked the fact that happened. And when Adrian read the final book, he couldn't believe that he'd actually influenced the story, and he was really, really happy. But thank you for asking about the cover. Yeah.
I know you get this question before, but why did you use the second voice? Why did you use the you?
I knew before I started the book that I wanted it to be about the malleability of identity. I just had this idea in my head, and I wanted the reader to immediately be in the protagonist's shoes. And the second person is really interesting to me. There's Lori Moore uses it sometimes in some of her stories, and I really admire her stories, especially her humor. And I just had never experimented with the second person before. I'd written first person and third person, but never second. And I started writing the second person and never looked back. And the second person is so interesting because you can be like, you're talking to yourself, like you're doing this, you're doing that. It can be accusatory. It can be like the movie, the scene in a bad movie. Like that a man's like in the bathroom of a restaurant, he's looking in the mirror, he's like, you gotta get your life together, or whatever it is. It's like this really accusatory thing. I don't know what movie I'm referring to, but I think there are lots of movies like that. And also I realized there's another advantage when I finished a draft with the book. I realized she changes her identity so many times. The main character does. She's Reeves, she's Sabine, she has all these aliases, and so by putting in you, I think liberated the reader from having to keep track of what her identity was at a current time. They didn't have to have some chart like, oh, is she now this person or is she now that person. She was always simply you.
Yes, I love the book, and I've been wondering about your process in writing it, whether you
knew from the start where it was going, or you were as surprised by the book as we are?
That's a great question. I actually don't like to map out everything before I do work on a book, because I think that takes the fun out of it. Fitzgerald said that character is plot, and I think that's really true. The more you are writing, your character actually make choices that even surprise you. It sounds really weird, but it starts the character starts making choices, and those lead to other choices. And so I try not to think more than 10 pages ahead when I'm writing. I also write screenplays, and so I thought about this kind of as a 3-act structure. I knew in the first act that she would get robbed in her Casablanca hotel. Second act, she would be working as a stand-in for this famous American actress. In the third act, there would be a tour bus with a woman who goes missing. And so I knew that. That's all I knew.
Did you have more than one ending? Did you play with more than
One ending. I had a different ending originally, and no one seemed to really like it. So. Yeah. Basically, the reason I knew it didn't work as an ending is I sent it to my editor, and he's like, "Is this the end, or did you forget to send me more pages?" And I go, "Oh God, if he's asking that, it's not a very good sign." So yes, I've had endings are hard. Endings are always hard, and I always find I have to write several versions of it. You have to write several drafts of everything, but endings in particular, I think you write 20 different drafts at least.
I love the ending.
Thank you. Don't say what it is.
I'm not saying that. I loved it.
Hi, yes.
Your writing seems very evocative of the places that you put your characters at. Have you been to Finland? Have you been to Morocco? Did you go there specifically for the purpose of researching this book?
I have, sort of northern Finland. In my book, Let the Northern Lights Erase Your Name, character goes to Lapland above Arctic Circle, and I did go there 3 times when I was working on that book. From a young age, I always knew not from a young age, but I always knew, when I was in my 20s, I knew I wanted to write a novel. I knew I wanted to set a book in the Arctic Circle. In part, my mother is Swedish, and when I was little, she gave me this pair of Sami reindeer slippers, and Sami are indigenous people of Lapland. I was always intrigued. And I think there are certain stories you hear when you're 9 that really just take hold of your brain. And I have to be careful now because my daughter's 9, so I have to think about this a lot. I was always interested in Sami, and I knew, and so I went there 3 times to work on it. The first time I went this summer, and it was really hot. And I worked at a film festival. That was how I got there, and it was really hot and disgusting, and people were drinking a lot, and because it was summer, and 2 people threw up on me on the same day, and I was like, it's not what I thought my novel was going to be about. So then I went back in the winter twice, and with Morocco, I didn't plan on setting a book, but my husband and I went there, and like the character in the novel, upon checking into our hotel room, all my stuff was taken, and so I had this. This is not an experience I would recommend for anybody, but what I will recommend is if all your stuff is stolen, you should watch the surveillance tapes of how it happened, because I got to watch the surveillance tapes, and it was so interesting to see how this ring of thieves had done it, and it's just an interesting thing to see yourself on a surveillance tape and see how everyone's, moving around you. So we went to the Casablanca police station and met with the police chief, and he was asking me all sorts of really relevant questions, like, what was the profession of your great-great-grandfather? And I was thinking, oh my God, my stuff is never going to be found. All of a sudden I was sitting there, and I just started thinking, oh, this book I've been working on, I'm stuck on it, I haven't figured out my beginning for it. I said, this is my beginning. And I suddenly I looked at my husband, and he could see, he just saw that I was thinking, and I started smiling, and I was the happiest person you've ever seen in this Casablanca police station. I think everyone there, with the detectives, were really confused, and anyway, so that's how that happened. So I didn't go there intending to set a book there, but did. That's a long answer about why you should watch surveillance videos. Anybody else? There's a question in the back first.
Since you brought up screenplays, I'd like to hear about your work in films and what you do and how you got started in it.
I wrote a screenplay called Away We Go with my husband, which came out in 2009, and I've written several other screenplays that I have not been made as of yet. The thing that I think is really I love screenplays and love the format. The thing that's really frustrating about screenplays for me is they require lots of money to get made. And you can write a book and all it takes is a piece of paper and a pencil, you know, and that's all you need. And to have a, you know, to get a movie made, you have to convince someone to put up a lot of money. But my experience with it was that like what I tried to incorporate in this book too is how boring being on a film set can be. Like if you think it's all lights, camera, action, there's so much just setting up and so much time where you spend actually making things look real. I remember being on the set at the end of Away We Go where we were in Florida and Maya Rudolph and John Krasinski are starring the movie, and Maya was sitting outside in the garden, and the garden was real, but it looked fake on camera. It looked like a fake garden because it was green and was so still. And so the film crew had to like set up fans and everything to make the garden move so it looked real. So I'm always interested in how things that are real don't look real in film. And so I try to have some fun with that in this book. Oh, part two, yes. Yeah.
How does your husband influence your writing?
How does he influence my writing? He's very supportive of my writing. He takes, like when I was writing this book, he took the kids for like a whole summer. Or not to take them for the whole summer, but just like basically I didn't really have to make dinner or do anything for summer, which is really nice. I got really used to that. That's how I think he reads all my work and I read all his work. So in that sense, he influences it. It's nice, you know, I think the advantage to be married to someone who's in the same profession, and this is true of anyone who's married to someone in the same profession, they just understand what you're going through. So he knew last summer that I wanted to write this book really, when was it last summer? I can't remember what summer it was. Whenever I was working on it, he knew that I didn't want to stop. I was afraid if I stopped writing, I would lose this kind of fever dream mentality I had in my head. And I just, so they kind of understand what you're going through. Yes.
Hi. Your illustration of the second person, a man standing in the mirror talking to himself, has a hint of Michael Corleone when they're in the restaurant. He goes in the restroom and he finds the gun.
Right.
He looks in the mirror and
Yeah.
in effect says to himself, "I can do this," and he goes out and shoots. the
Thank
police
you.
chief.
So that's the original one, and since then there are a lot of takeoffs on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now I know the
But
source.
it has the same parallel. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, the guy. There's always the guy in the restaurant. Yeah. Thank you. Maybe we have time for like one or two more questions, and then we'll do something else. Hi.
I'm curious about what you said about the endings and how it's so hard for you. Can you say like why, like, you know, I mean, I would say sometimes the beginning is really the hard part and you kind of know where you want to end up. So I'm curious what it is about endings.
Are you a writer? Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying? Okay. I think what's hard about endings is just, yeah, you know, there's this, I remember a professor of mine in college who had written for the New Yorker. She always said that the New Yorker editors, this was back a long time ago, but I don't know if they still do this, but they used to just always like lop off the last paragraph or two paragraphs. They realized that writers try to sum up too much in the end, and so it's actually better to leave it just hanging just a little bit, like and also to take out the word realized, because most people, they put like in the last paragraph they have the word, I realized then that, and that's actually telling too much. Well, it's not in their style, it's telling too much, and I think for most readers it probably is revealing too much to say exactly what, in summation, what this book was about, but everybody realizes. But yeah, endings are just hard for me to know what the right way to end is, and I often try to think of things in different mediums, so if I get stuck with something, I think, what would this look like if it was a film, or what would this look like if it was a play? And this, you can't do that with poems. You're like, what would this look like if it was a poem? Get a lot shorter. But I think that, yeah, so that's sometimes what I think of. That's what sometimes helps me get out of my ending predicament. But endings are hard. You know, I'm sure a lot of us read books that are like, oh, I loved every part of it except for the ending. And I feel for those writers because, you know.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Oh, you have a question for me.
Totally random question, but I'm just intrigued. You obviously read a lot as well, and obviously you write brilliantly, but how, like, in the past 6 months of what's your, like, most favorite book that you've read?
Oh gosh, it's such a good question. In the past 6 months, I read this book called Argonauts by Maggie Nelson. That's really, I really am interested in it. It's a nonfiction story about a woman who's, it's her story, she's pregnant, and her partner's transitioning while she's pregnant. And it's only 142 pages, it's very philosophical and very dense. And the reason I know it's a good book is I was in LA last week and after a bookstore reading it out with some friends. And the three of us had read this book, and all we could do was talk about that book for about an hour, which is always a sign of a good book. Right now I'm reading Department of Speculation by Jenny Ophel. Isn't that a great book? And also, yeah, I always love to read, I try to support, I always love to read female writers who are humorous, because I feel like I just want to support humorous female writers. So she's one of them. Another great book I read in the last 6 months. You know what I read? I've been reading, I've been reading a lot of Paul Bowles, obviously, because he wrote a lot of books set in Morocco. And then I've been reading Jane Bowles, his wife's story, his wife's book, actually the only novel she wrote called Two Serious Ladies. And it's such a weird book, and I say that flatteringly, like it's like the weirdest book, but I also think that she was kind of the original person who wrote like the eccentric woman who's like the outsider. You know, you see movies where the character's unflappable, like her characters are completely flappable. They're always just getting like in these situations, and they're really like Two Serious Ladies. So those are my recommendations. And I'm sure that this fine bookstore carries all those books. So, thank you so much for coming out and for your questions and for laughing. And it's nice to see all your lovely faces. Thanks.